Well, here I am again looking at the koi sword and yellow leopard, half black yellow leopard guppy tank. I know I do a lot of videos at this tank, and you can see this label here. I had someone feed my fish while I was out of town and just told them how much to feed. That's way less than I usually do, but I like to have people feed real light when I'm out of town so I don't have to worry about it. But anyway, I know I do a lot of videos at this tank. But that's because it has I love both the fish in this tank. I love the half black yellow leopards and I love the koi swords. So they get a lot of my attention when I'm thinking about a video. And they're both very hardy and prolific. The koi swords are more prolific, and I think they probably predate somewhat on the half black yellow guppy fry, but I still get decent production out of both groups in this tank. But I wanted to stop and talk about very quickly the importance of culling your fish. This tank had kind of gotten out of control as far as there were so many breeding adults that I couldn't really control traits anymore. I couldn't really, I wasn't producing consistent traits. I was producing a lot of smudgy patterns that weren't crisp, defined patterns. The tail fins on the females were really becoming an exaggerated shark fin, which I didn't care for. So thankfully it didn't carry into the males, but I did not like that look. And so I culled it down really hard. And now the past few drops of fry, the males have just been so much more consistent in their color and their pattern. They've just improved tremendously, and so now my production is still good. It's lower than it was before because I don't have as many breeding adults, but it's more predictable. So I have really good pattern coming through on all the males now. No smudgy patterns anymore. No tails turning to this dark smoky blue smudgy pattern that I was struggling with before, and no shark tail females, or very few anyway. So that's wonderful. And not only that, but I'm getting improvement on the things I was wanting to improve, which is I wanted darker body males. I wanted the green iridophores on the top of the head, as well as the blue or silver iridophores going down the back, which I'm getting more consistently now in the males. So that's wonderful. The fish are smaller because I removed the big fish because they were expressing a lot of the negative traits that I didn't like. And so I am working with a smaller line now, and I've just had to accept that they're not going to be big. But that's okay. I'm not trying to show these fish. I'm breeding for color. And so, someday maybe I'll be able to build the size up, but I'm really not concerned about having huge fish, more just wanting brightly colored fish. So this is gonna be the primary breeding male in the backdrop, and he actually has not only green iridophores on his forehead, which I know is hard to see in the video, but he also has some starting to show up on his lower lip, which is very interesting. I haven't seen that before. That would indicate to me that the green iridophores can be bred to spread over the front part of the body, as far as over the head. And so potentially, maybe someday we could end up with like a metallic green metal head type look on these half black yellow leopards. Also, his tail fin is growing in more rounded, so it's heading in the direction of a half moon, although it's not 180 degrees. But it is heading in that direction, which I actually prefer. I prefer the rounded edge rather than the delta. So I have no problem breeding him. I don't care if I lose the delta trait. Doesn't matter to me. I'm really only interested in color. I want to keep a long tail, but it doesn't have to be a delta. In my book, a rounded tail would be much more attractive anyway. So, and then this is the secondary male. He's got a beautiful delta tail shape. Nice, crisp, defined pattern. He's got green on the forehead. He's not as heavy bodied, but his color and pattern are good. And he's got the white line down the back. So he's my secondary choice, but the primary choice is back there. He is stunning. You can see that green on his forehead and lip when he turns his head downwards. He's towards the back of the tank there. So anyway, culling your fish is important, and it will improve the quality of what you're breeding for, whatever that is. Whether you're breeding for show or you just have something in mind that you're going for and wouldn't even be, would be disqualified in a show, but it's a beautiful fish. Who cares, But if you're breeding fish with a goal or goals in mind, it's important to cull the fish down and be able to control, at least to some degree, even in a colony setting, what you're producing. See, here's another fish that's turned out really nice. That's one that's growing up in here, another male. But he's definitely by far the best fish I've produced in this tank, by my standards. So, hopefully that was interesting to folks. Don't be afraid though to knock the numbers down so you can get control of a line again. I have another line I need to do that too, which is my platinum red mosaic dumbos. I've about lost control of that line. It's producing all kinds of weird stuff, and there's so many fish in the tank. I've got to get the numbers down, and even on these swordtails, I'm slowly trying to work them down as well. I've taken in a group of 9 a month or 2 ago to the pet store, and then just last week I took in a group of 12 young adults. And I'll probably do some more, maybe in another week or 2, take in some more. It's hard though, because you've got to wait until, if you're trying to sell them, you've got to wait until the fish are old enough to where, they'll sell at the pet store. So they've got to have a little bit of size to them. They've got to, if they're swordtails, they've got to be displaying the swordtail in the males. With guppies, you want them pretty well colored up and of modest size, so the people want to, they feel comfortable paying for it. A lot of people in a pet store don't want to pay for a fish that's small, even if it's going to grow up nice. They don't want to pay for, a sub-adult fish. They want a young adult fish, I would call it, or juvenile, where it's displaying most of the adult character traits, but it's not an older fish. So it's hard because waiting for those fish to grow up, you can end up with fry out of fish you don't intend to breed in a colony situation like that. So it's a slow process, but it's doable, and I can say from this tank that I am seeing it happen. It does take longer though than if I was line breeding, but I don't want to expend my entire fish room to breed one line of fish, which is what I'd have to do to properly line breed. So this is the way it is. I was at one time pulling males. I'm not sure that really makes much difference to pull the males. It might make a small amount of difference, but by the time I've had the time to pull the males and notice that they're sexing out to be males, they've already probably started breeding. So I'm not sure that it's really accomplishing much versus just waiting until I can pull them to take straight to the pet store. So we'll see if I continue that practice or not. It will help with tank pressure slightly. It'll keep a slightly lower population in the tank, so I might do it. With the swordtails, you can't. It's literally just take them by surprise, get as many scoops as you can, and pull out the young adults, and hopefully you get half a dozen to a dozen fish, because once you take 2 or 3 scoops, they're gone. They're back behind the rocks and the plants, and you can't get to them. So guppies are not quite as smart. Anyway, hopefully that's encouraging if you're working on breeding guppies, or any live bears, or probably any fish, but live bears in particular. Don't be afraid to cull the fish and get your numbers worked down so that you maintain control of the line and it doesn't get away from you, and not only to sustain that line, but also improve upon it and make changes you want to see in it. And don't worry about standards. Like, unless you're breeding to show an IFGA or something like that, where there are standards, don't worry about breeding to a standard of someone else or an organization or whatever. Breed to what you think is attractive and beautiful, because chances are other people will appreciate that as well, and it doesn't really matter if they accept it in a show, unless that's your goal, which is to show and win shows. Then it's a whole other story, and you should follow their practices. But if that's not what you're interested in, like with me, don't worry about it. Just breed what you enjoy and select for what you like in your fish.